Hi! So I recently ran into a new plugin, which is of the type that it can replace all the processing on your MixBus. Think God Particle, maybe a bit of Master Plan, or a lot of more standard plugins which you have put on your MixBus. And I have to say, I was very surprised by the results. So let's have a look and listen to MixBoss by WA Production. Let's go! Now, I first heard about this plugin on the Working Audio Tools podcast by Paul Third and Ed Thorne. And I think it was in the episode in which they were both doing a hip-hop mix. And the mix from Paul Third was actually chosen by the clients to be released, with a lot of help from this plugin apparently. Now, MixBoss is a plugin which was developed in cooperation with award-winning sound engineer Emrah Celik, and it's based on the top-down mixing concept. So the whole idea is that you put this plugin on your MixBus from the beginning of your mix, and that this will result in the individual channels needing a lot less processing than usual. Because if all your tracks after recording are a little bit too dull, for example, then instead of adding high ends to all of those tracks, you may as well do it on MixBus in one go. And then you don't need to do it on all the individual channels, of course. Now, I have to say that normally on my MixBus, I have quite a lot of plugins. I'll show you those later. But the main plugins on there, for example, the EQ and compression, I do add them from the beginning already, and it helps, definitely. But this plugin is supposed to be able to replace many of those plugins on the MixBus in one go, like, for example, was the idea with God Particle. Now, I will not do a direct comparison with God Particle in this video, but I did check it out at the time of release, and I'll leave a link to that video in the description below. Let's have a look at MixBoss. So this is the plugin on my MixBus, as you can see over here, and I've turned off all my usual processing on there. Yeah, except the end console from Sonomus, because this plugin is linked to end console instances on all the individual channels, so I had to kind of leave that on. And it's a console emulation, by the way. All the other stuff I switched off, and I'll show you later all these plugins that I try to replace with MixBoss. But just to talk you through some of the features of this plugin, I just put it at the end of my MixBus. And at the top left of the plugin, you can see this big control knob, which is actually a precisely tuned multiband compressor with linear analog crossover filters that maintain phase integrity while adding punch and cohesion, directly from the manual, of course. And underneath this control, you see gain reduction LEDs, which light up when there is some gain reduction. And the control is actually a wet-dry control for the compressed signal. Now, the instructions in the manual state that you need to use the input control to get some gain reduction on at least the low and mid LEDs here. And then you can determine the amount of compression, the wet-dry relation of the compressed MixBus, as I understand it, until you like what you're hearing. So let's play some audio, and you can see that right now the low and mid bands are not compressing at all. I did notice that I have to turn the control up a little bit to be able to see those LEDs light up. So let's turn up the input level over here, and you can see right now, you see there is some activity on the low and mid LEDs, and then you can turn up the control until you hear a compressed signal. So let's listen to this with audio.
In the city lights, when dreams come alive, if I'm and read 'em, no more compromise. The echoes of doubt are fading away, and we're riding the...
Okay, I think that sounds about right to me. Now, the next control is the enhance knob over here. And this is a dry-wet control for 3 character modes, which you can select on the right side over here, depth, color, and wide. Now, the depth is supposed to add depth to your mix, creating front-to-back separation between sounds and enrich the stereo image. Now, you may have heard that some engineers actually add reverb to their MixBus, even mastering engineers sometimes, to add a bit of that depth to a flat mix. But according to the manual, this is not a traditional reverb. Instead, it provides a much clearer and more defined sense of depth than what a classic reverb typically offers. Let's have a listen.
In the city lights, when dreams come alive.
Okay, it definitely does do something. Now, there's also the color, which adds lively and rich saturation to your mix. Let's check it out.
In the city lights, when dreams come alive, if I'm and read 'em, no more compromise.
Okay, that also increases loudness. And then you have the white button over here, which carefully increases stereo width without breaking the cohesion of the mix. Let's have a listen.
In the city lights, when dreams come alive, if I'm and read 'em, no more compromise. The echoes of doubt.
Very clearly audible. Now, as you can see, there's only one knob for all of these different character modes. So if you want to use all three, then you cannot do less of the depth and more of the color, for example. So you have to find a balance in that. Let's have a listen.
In the city lights, when dreams come alive, if I'm read 'em, no more compromise. The echoes of doubt are fading away.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right to me. Now, before we move on, if you like this video or find it useful, please give it a big thumbs up for the YouTube algorithm so that it gets shown to more people. Subscribe to the channel and ring the little bell icon so you know when I publish another video. For even more support, you can consider using the super thanks button below the video. Or if you are planning to buy anything at one of these stores, I also have a lot of affiliate links in the description. And if you click one of those links before you make your purchase, I will get a small commission without any additional cost to you, which is always very much appreciated and keeps this channel going. But let's get back to the plugin. Now, next up is the balance knob. And the balance knob, according to the manual, is a spectral mix balancer that references a custom noise profile created from thousands of songs. And it continuously and gently rebalances your mix in real time to match a musically cohesive tonal balance. Use this knob carefully and moderately for best results. So it sounds to me like it's a bit of soothed Speccraft curves equator. But let's have a listen to what it does.
In the city lights, when dreams come alive, if I'm read 'em, no more compromise. The echoes of doubt are fading away.
Okay, it's subtle, but it definitely does do something. While listening to this, I think it makes the frequency spectrum a bit less spiky maybe. So let's leave it on. Now, next up is an equalizer, 3 bands. And the low and high bands apparently offer a Pultec style equalizer with gentle musical curves. Now, normally this equalizer is in front of the dynamics processing, which is happening on the top part, but you can also put it after the dynamics processing. And that's actually what I'm going to do, because I'm replacing some plugins on my MixBus, and in there I have the compressor in front of the equalizer as well. So let's try that. Let's try some of those controls.
In the city lights, when dreams come alive, if I'm read 'em, no more compromise. The echoes of doubt are fading away. I'm rewriting this script, I'm owning the stage. Hard basic thumb.
Okay, so they have a range of about 4 dB, but obviously it should be enough. Since I'm replacing an analog equalizer on my MixBus, I'm going to set this initially to the same values that I've set up on that. And that's a boost of 2 dB in the lows and a boost of 1 dB in the highs. Let's have a listen.
In the city lights, when dreams come alive, if I'm read 'em, no more compromise. The echoes.
Yeah, that sounds about right to me. Now, another control of the push EQ is the mix EQ switch over here. And that eliminates potential infrasonic and ultrasonic frequencies in your songs, giving you a much tighter and cohesive mix. So let's have a listen to the difference.
In the city lights, when dreams come alive, if I'm read 'em, no more compromise. The echoes of.
Yeah, I like it better with it on, so let's leave it on. Reading this, I think it's a low cut and a high cut filter, but it's probably more involved than that. Let's move on to the limit control, which is obviously a limiter. And I have to say that I already put it on a little bit, because if you don't do this and you use the other processing, your MixBus may clip already if it's a bit hot. So it's good to have the limiter on at least a little bit from the beginning. But let's try to push it a little bit from the same level that I got from my traditional MixBus processing. And I used Masterplan for that, and I have to say that I only turn that on if I need to deliver a mix for my bands, for example, so that they can listen to it at the same level as other music that they're listening to. But if it's a mix that I deliver to mastering, I would turn it off again. So let's see if I can push this to the same loudness as my traditional MixBus chain with Masterplan, which I think was around -11. So let's see how loud this is already.
In the city lights, when dreams come alive, if I'm read 'em, no more compromise. The echoes of doubt are fading away. I'm rewriting this script, I'm owning the stage.
Well, I don't even have to turn it up that loud, since it seemed to be already at that level. So let's leave it at that. And you can see that the true peak max is -0.4. I don't think there's a control on the plugin for that, but it seems to be within limits that people usually master to. Even though Spotify requires you to mix to a lower true peak level, I think a lot of people don't actually follow that guideline. Now there's also a mix knob which allows you to use this in parallel if you want to, which is the dry-wet blend between all of these processes before the limiter. The limiter is always at the end and limits everything, both the dry as well as the wet signal. Now there's also oversampling, you can turn it up to 4, and you can flip the polarity of the output, which according to the manual is you can hear how your mix sounds with reversed polarity. Sometimes flipping the polarity can make your mix sound stronger and punchier. I've never actually had that experience, but I've also never tried it, so let's give it a try.
In the city lights, when dreams come alive, if I'm and read 'em, no more compromise. The echoes of doubt are fading away.
Are you hearing a difference? Let me know in the comments. Now there's also a global output level control, and on the right side over here it can also simulate how your mix sounds on the various speaker systems. The first one is what they call a grot box speaker, and apparently that's a term used for small, low quality reference speakers commonly used during music production and mixing. Are they talking MS-10s here or maybe mix cubes? Let's have a listen.
In the city lights, when dreams come alive, if I'm and read 'em, no more compromise.
Well, it definitely limits the frequency spectrum. The next one over here is for the car tests. Let's see what that sounds like.
In the city lights, when dreams come alive, if I'm and read 'em, no more compromise.
A very bass-heavy car apparently. Then sadly, mobile phones is also a device which is used a lot for listening to music these days. Let's see what that sounds like.
In the city lights, when dreams come alive, if I'm and read 'em, no more compromise.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Awful, right? And the last option provides the ability to listen to it in mono, which is still a thing if your music is played back on large systems at festivals, for example, concerts or nightclubs, or maybe even portable Bluetooth speakers.
In the city lights, when dreams come alive, if I'm and read 'em, no more compromise. The echo.
Okay, it's a good option to have. Now below here you can see the input and output meters, and of course there's the whole system with presets that you can save, and there are also a couple of presets provided to you as part of the plugin. Now let's have a look at which plugins I'm actually replacing on the MixBus with this one MixBoss plugin, and then compare the results, see how my traditional MixBus processing sounds compared to the MixBus processing. And I have to confess that I did not make this mix using MixBoss from the beginning, so I'm not actually using it the way it's meant to be used. But yeah, I just had this mix already, and I just want to see whether this plugin would be able to give similar results replacing my own MixBus processing. So let's have a look. Now on my normal MixBus, I have Sonic's Inflator with this preset that I'm always using and have been using for at least the last 10 years. It just makes it all sound a bit more edgy. Next up is my analog signal chain, which nowadays consists of a Tagler Magnetismus 2 saturation processor and a Tagler Audio Cream. So another thing which I removed. Then what I tend to always use on my MixBus, and I usually turn this one on like when I'm 80% done in the mix, is the UAD Ampix ATR 102 tape emulation. For some stereo width, I'm using the SPL BIG processor, which is trying to emulate their big hardware processor, although I've heard it doesn't quite exactly do the same thing. Then I'm using Bass Room for mastering the mix to get my low end properly in check. For example, for this one, I had the profile set to Pop Contemporary, and then you can move these sliders to get the various bands in the low end similar to the reference of Pop Contemporary. Yeah, there's a Pro Q3 on here which was not really doing anything in this mix. And then again, when I need to deliver a mix to, for example, my band or anybody else, I'm using Masterplan to do my own homegrown mastering for a bit. For serious mastering, I always use an external mastering engineer. So those are all the plugins that are replaced by MixBoss. So let's see how it sounds compared to the original processing. And I did tune MixBoss a little bit more to get it to sound the way I wanted it to. And I can't really easily switch between the MixBoss processing and my traditional MixBus processing. So what I've done is I've made an export of this part This is the export with the original MixBus processing, and then I could solo this track on the listen bus and then compare it to the MixBoss processing, which is on the full mix on the multi-tracks. So this is the way it sounds with the original processing.
In the city lights, when dreams come alive, if I'm in freedom, no more compromise. The echoes of doubt are fading away. I'm rewriting the script, I'm owning the stage. Heart basic thunder, breaking through the night. In the neon glow, off in my light. No looking back, no chains on my soul. I found my freedom, I'm in control.
And this is with MixBoss processing on there.
In the city lights, when dreams come alive, if I'm in freedom, no more compromise. The echoes of doubt are fading away. I'm rewriting the script, I'm owning the stage. Heart basic thunder, breaking through the night. In the neon glow, off in my light. No looking back, no chains on my soul. My freedom, I'm in control.
Let's switch it up a bit so you can more easily hear the difference maybe. I'll start with the original and then gradually I'll switch to MixBoss and back.
In the city lights, when dreams come alive, if I'm in freedom, no more compromise. The echoes of doubt are fading away. I'm rewriting the script, I'm owning the stage. Basic thunder, breaking through the night. In the neon glow, off in my light. No looking back, no chains on my soul. I found my freedom, I'm in control.
Yeah, so you can hear it's quite a difference actually. The MixBoss processing to me sounds much fuller, much more controlled compared to the original sound, which even sounds a bit tiny actually. Another thing that you can hear is that the MixBoss processing actually sounds a bit louder, even though these examples were actually level matched, and the true peak value of the MixBoss processing was actually lower than the true peak value of my original processing with Masterplan. So go figure. Now, as for the price of this plugin, that's amazingly low. Let's have a look at the website, because currently they're having a spring sale and I think an introductory sale for this plugin as well, but it ends in 10 days. Now, I'll be releasing this video in about 4 days from now, so you still have some time to grab this deal if you want to. And that sale currently is for 70% off, which I think I bought it for like 18 euros or something. Yeah, 1/8, you heard that correctly, which I find quite amazing for such an effective plugin. So if you still want to grab that deal and support the channel, you can see over here, it's available on Plugin Boutique, to which I can put an affiliate link in there. And then it's 19 euros, where the normal list price is 63 euros. So take the demo, have a listen before you buy, and if you like it, grab the deal for this great plugin. Now, I've only tried it on this single mix so far, so it might not work for everything, but if you already have some experience with this plugin, let us know in the comments. And let us know as well if you do try it based on this video and how you feel about it. Now, a very similar processor to this one is of course the God Particle plugin, which is very popular and which I also reviewed a while back. And I'll put a link to that video over here. Check it out, enjoy, and see you soon.